My father left me his debt, his orchard, and one instruction written on a receipt. If you can't pay Callaway back, give him the East Grove. I burned the receipt. Then I drove to the Callaway farm to tell them exactly what I thought of that arrangement. And that was my first mistake. My second mistake was assuming the man who answered the door would be old, slow, and easy to outmaneuver. He was 32. He had his father's eyes and his father's patience, which meant he just stood there in the doorway while I gave my whole angry speech. And then he said very quietly, "I'm not here to take your orchard, Nora. I never was. And I had no idea what to do with that. My name is Nora Vance. My family has grown wine grapes and cider apples on 38 acres outside Carver's Bend for 3 generations. We were not rich, but we were stubborn, which in farming amounts to the same thing. When my father died in March, I inherited the land, the equipment, the dog, and a loan of $42,000 owed to one Thomas Callaway Sr., who had also died that winter 8 days before my father, as if they had agreed on a time. The debt transferred to his son. I had until August to repay it or lose the East Grove. 12 acres of the oldest apple trees on the property. I had 3 months. No savings. A cold spring. A broken irrigation line. And a buyer who had just walked away from my autumn harvest contract. So I drove to the Callaway farm ready to argue. His name was Daniel. He poured me coffee without asking, like I had been there before. Which I had not. The original loan, he said, was an arrangement between 2 men who trusted each other more than they trusted banks. It wasn't meant to be a weapon. It is one now, I said. Only if I use it like one. He spread papers across the table. Not a threat, a proposal. His family's distribution network. My family's orchard output. A shared label for a small batch cider neither of us could produce alone. The debt would convert to equity. I would keep all 38 acres. Why? I asked. Because the East Grove is worth more growing than it is sold. He was right about that. I wasn't sure I believed the rest. But I was out of options, and sitting across from a man I found myself wanting to trust, which was precisely the thing I had promised myself I wouldn't do. I signed the partnership agreement on a Tuesday. We got a marriage license on a Friday. That part was not in the proposal. That came from the county clerk's office. An old zoning clause that required a primary residential couple to block the development company's land claim. My lawyer said it would hold. There was one way to use it. There's one other option, Daniel said when I explained it over the phone. I know, I said. Pause. Is that a yes? It's a not a no. Which is the closest I get. He laughed, once short. And I was surprised by how much that sound settled something in my chest. The ceremony was 4 minutes. No flowers. No guests. Afterward, we stood in the parking lot and he said, "You want to come see what the Callaway side of the fence looks like?" I went. And the rows of pear trees on his north field were the most beautiful thing I had seen in months, which told me I was already in trouble. By the end of summer we had blocked the claim, stabilized the harvest, and produced 1,100 cases of a cider I was genuinely proud of. By the end of summer I also knew the sound of his truck coming up the drive. I knew he took his coffee black and checked the weather at 5 in the morning the same way I did. I knew that when something worried him he went quiet, not cold, just inward, and the best thing to do was hand him something to work on and wait. What I did not know was what to do with the fact that I had stopped thinking of August as the month the debt cleared. He found me in the East Grove on the last evening of the month. I was walking the rows the way my father used to, touching the bark of the oldest trees as I passed. He fell in beside me without saying anything. After a while I said, "The debt's clear." "I know. So is the zoning claim." "I know that too." I stopped walking. The light was almost gone. The sky had gone the color of a bruised pear, deep purple at the edge, gold above the ridge. "Then we're done," I said. I needed to hear how it sounded. He looked at me the way he had in the doorway that very first day. Patient. Unhurried. "We're done with the arrangement," he said. "We're not done with the orchard. And I'm not done with you." He reached over, picked a low apple off the nearest branch and handed it to me. "Unless you are." I held the apple. I thought about everything I had burned and rebuilt since March. About the man who had never once moved like he owned my land, even when he had every right to. "I'm not," I said. The trees held still around us. The ridge went dark. And neither of us moved toward the truck for a long while after that.